Okay, here we go. Here we go. Three, two, one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, welcome back to another episode on The Right Lane. I'm here with my good friends, Sheikh Junaid Ahmed and Sheikh Akib Chaudhry. I know it's been a while since we sat down and recorded. I think the last time we recorded was in the month of Ramadan, and then we took a really long break, and it's kind of hard to get each and every one of us to record at the same time and the same day, and we all have things to do. So, nevertheless, we are here today, and we're going to record an episode in regards to smoking, and towards that subject, we're going to talk about smoking in general and also hookah and shisha. As we all know, especially, I mean, since the 18th and 19th century, smoking has become so popular. And because of its popularity, till today, it's just going up. And we can't deny anymore the amount of people, especially the youth, that are introduced and exposed to smoking. So the question is always there, and I have a question right here in front of me in which we can rotate our conversation and our discussion for today. So the question is from a youth. So he says that I want to know if smoking is haram or makruh. Haram meaning totally, completely prohibited, or makruh because there are different types of makruh levels, right? Something which is disliked. So he says different people and friends are telling me different things. And also, I want to know the reasons why it would be haram if it's haram or if it's makruh. And in other words, the legal rulings of Islam when it comes to smoking. And with that, we can give an introduction to smoking and just jump in right into the topic of smoking, whether it's haram or halal.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jerry, if you want.
You want to start? Go ahead, Sheikh.
Well, before we even start, I think there's a huge difference between saying something is halal and haram and makruh, right? Just because something is makruh doesn't mean you're supposed to do it or you're allowed to do it. Unfortunately, some people, they take the term makruh and they say, yeah, I'm allowed to do it, right? It's not necessarily halal. It's not mubah, as we know that there's categories, right? There's something that is wajib, fard, and then you have mubah, which is something that is allowed. Makruh is not the same as mubah. Makruh means it's dislike. You shouldn't be doing it. The question just comes in, do you get sin for doing it or is it merely disliked, right? But in no way, shape, or form does it mean you're supposed to do something that's makruh. So I just want to throw that out there, right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good clarification, actually. Because sometimes when it's makruh, you might say, well, it's not haram. I should just...
Yeah, and then people think makruh is synonymous with halal, which is not, right? It's actually disliked.
In other words, when you say, or the scholars, they say something is makruh, it's not to encourage the action. Right?
Yeah.
But they're placing the status of makruh to give the meaning of
Discouragement.
Yeah, discouragement.
Discouragement.
And the evidences perhaps are not as absolute to kind of put it forward as being haram. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that don't say with your tongue something halal and something haram, right? So out of wara, out of piety, if the evidence is not absolute, right?
But all the evidence point towards
all
it
the
being
evidence
haram. It's just
point
not qat'i.
yeah, exactly, qat'i, yeah. So it's not when a scholar says something is makruh, it's not saying, hey, go ahead and do it, right? It's not mubah, it's not allowed.
It's just, I can't tell you it's haram.
the word
Exactly.
qat'i, the word that you use, just for the audience to be familiar with. How would you explain that?
Like Sheikh said, absolute. Like there's a clear-cut
Absolute?
text, right?
Yeah, like there's some verse in the Quran or there's some hadith that's completely absolute. It's been transmitted to us in an absolute fashion. The meaning of it absolute, right? Like drinking wine and alcohol, for example. Then there's some other verses that it's not absolute. I could say there's a little bit of wiggle room, but it points toward being haram. But the scholar is not going to say that it's haram because it's just not absolute. Right.
Yeah.
But that goes more back to the piety of the scholars and their own principles, not necessarily encouraging you or allowing you to do so. Right. I think that's important to clarify before we start.
Yeah. That's good. It's good clarification.
But like the topic around smoking and shisha and even drinking is an interesting one because, like, I think the society that we grow up in, right? It kind of the TV that people watch, the media, the friends, and everything. It makes us feel like it's a privilege to become 18. Like there's something on the other side you're missing out. Like are you drinking age yet? Like you're missing out. Are you 18 yet? or like even shisha and lounges, stuff like that, to check for your IDs. And it's like a cool thing to be able to do this kind of thing. So just that, I think, encourages the young people like to be cool. It sounds very whatever, immature, childish, but it has an effect.
It
on
does.
us. It does. Like
Environment.
somebody walking around with the cigarette, like they must feel cool. And like you said, in the 1800s when it first came out, no one knew the harms of smoking as much as we do
Yeah.
now. Even doctors advertised for smoking back in the days on the packets. Well, now you can't even advertise for cigarettes and stuff. But doctors,
Yeah.
what do you call it? Advocated for cigarettes. So we have to kind of clear that out. When it
So,
comes to things.
given all these facts right now, especially studies showing right now how bad is smoking for you, but still, as Muslims, especially living in this age, in this era, where at least, at some point, like you mentioned, when you're 18, are you at an age where you can drink? We know drinking is haram. Or when you're 21, you can do certain things, right? I'm not going in details. But right now, even we have youngsters that are exposed to smoking pretty much anything right now at a very early age. And with that, they always want to know, if they want to know, right? If they want to know that if smoking is haram or makruh. Now, it's given that some people would want to know if it's haram because they want to know, and some would want to look for a loophole, saying that, hey, maybe if I can continue it, because it does become an addiction.
Of
right?
course, yeah.
So they're looking for a way, if it's makruh or a little beneath the haram level.
There is
So,
a verse that I came across where, so let's take cigarettes and smoking and shisha and all those things. Would we consider these things to be tayyibat, from the good things, pure things, pleasant things, or would we kind of say that the khaba'ith?
Khaba'is, yeah.
Right? If we agree and establish their khaba'ith, Allah Azza wa Jalla, وَيُحَرِّمُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْخَبَائِثَ, Allah has made haram upon all the khaba'is.
Can you
So-
translate what khaba'is?
So basically impure things that are
Impure
not,
things. Okay, so
right.
you have the tayyibat, which halal and tayyib as the Quran
right,
says.
like the mangoes,
meaning
fruits, etc.
Right.
Nothing wrong with those
the
things.
good.
Right.
And then the khaba'is means bad or
Right.
filthy
Things that
or-
are filthy, impure.
Okay.
So you ask yourself, like shisha, is that something that falls in that category of khaba'ith? And that's we all read it, right? We never really thought about it like that, also. So that kind of clarifies. You ask yourself, is tafti nafsak, right? Ask yourself. You're the biggest mufti for yourself. Sometimes the scholar is not going to save you. Sometimes it's just your heart what it tells you.
Anything you want to add, Sheikh?
Yeah, so just going back to the haram makruh thing, I think first we should define what is makruh and what's the ramifications of makruh. So what we have is levels, right? Just to quickly go over it in the scholars of the principles of fiqh, they say that you have something that's mubah. Mubah means something that is completely allowed. It's not halal, it's not haram, right? And if you do it, it's great. If you don't do it, it's great too. There's no prohibition and there is no command for you to do it, right? Then you have something that could be haram, okay? Haram basically means that you have prohibitions from the Quran or the Hadith, right? That is, as Shaykh was mentioned, that is qat'i, it's absolute, right? There is no wiggle room, there is no other ways of understanding it, like drinking alcohol, for example. Then you have that level in between mubah and haram, which is called makruh. Now, makruh could be split into two categories according to some of the madhahib, right? For example, the Hanafi school. They said that there's two levels of makruh. You have makruh, which means that if you do it, you're not sinful, but it's disliked,
Okay.
right? But then makruh can also mean something that, as Shaykh was saying, it points what am I trying to say? It points toward being haram, but
Okay.
we can't absolutely say it's haram. But what they do say is, if a person does that makruh, you're still sinful, right? You're still sinful. So if you do something that's haram, it's sinful. If you do something makruh, tahrimi, they call it, you're sinful. And then you have makruh tanzihi that you still should avoid anyways, even though it's not sinful, right?
Yeah, we're not encouraging any of the makruh acts.
Yeah, you're not encouraging any of the makruh acts. So the lowest level you go is something that is disliked. Then you have something that's still haram in terms of action, right? And then you have something that's absolutely haram, which is haram. So I think that
So would you say, when a scholar says and points at something to be makruh tahrimi, is it because there's not specific text pointing out for it to be haram? Is that why? Or because for smoking, right, in this topic, it's not mentioned in the Quran, okay, smoking is haram, right? We have the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, right? Your body has a right over you. And any other hadith you want to share?
Right. I mean, you're not supposed to take in anything that's harmful
anything
for yourself.
which harms your body.
Right.
So we're pretty much considering that and applying it to smoking, and the danger that it has on your health.
But if we say that, then how about when someone says that, well, if you eat McDonald's every day, that's also harming your body, or if you don't exercise, that's also harming your body and not giving your body that right that it has over you. So what do we say to that? How do we make that, draw
smoking,
that line?
You can drop smoking into that too.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, that's an interesting question. I think like if somebody says drinking Pepsi is harmful for me and, smoking is harmful for me. I think the difference between the two is that Pepsi in itself, by itself, it doesn't harm you.
Soda.
Right? Or soda in general, right? By itself, it won't harm you. But what's going to harm you is if you drink it and you're a couch potato, you don't move, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're drinking soda and you're running around and you're active, it's not going to harm you, right? Eating McDonald's, for example, or eating burgers. I don't want to say McDonald's, but eating burgers, for
Not
example.
sponsored.
Yeah. Eating burgers, for example, it's not going to harm you by itself, right? But if you're just eating burgers all day and you're not moving around playing video games, right? No activity. I mean, your arteries going to get clogged, right? Smoking in itself, it's meant to harm you. It's smoke inhaling in your body.
And it's
right?
proven, right? Definitely articles on how bad smoking is for you. We'll definitely share it in the link.
Yeah. And with the McDonald's and stuff, I guess that you can say there's some benefit to it. It's food at the end of the day. You get energy from it. There's some benefit.
Yeah.
It falls into the category of food. But like smoking and cigarettes, they can't be considered food. What benefit does it have? Right? There's no benefit.
There's no benefit of
nutritional benefit. It's just you're addicted to it and you need to do it. And we shouldn't be dependent on it. That's another thing. Addiction is not good to anything, right? You don't want to be dependent on a cigarette whenever you feel sad or so. You want to go outside, pop a cigarette. So there's a difference in food and, so.
Smoking.
Yeah.
Or taking cigarettes. So this is the reason why, where we have the first view of the scholars, which they deem it haram, prohibited. But a second view is that it's makruh. And I think pretty much you clarified that, because there's no specific text telling you smoking is
Directly haram.
But I think we should be careful over here. When the scholar says makruh, do they mean makruh tahrimi or do they mean makruh? Like
Makruh
dislike?
tahrimi.
It's makruh tahrimi. Makruh
Yes.
tahrimi means you're not supposed to.
Okay, so
you're
you're not supposed to do it.
It's basically haram, but I just can't say it's haram.
Okay,
I don't think a scholar will come and say it's makruh, disliked, right?
Yeah.
They won't say makruh because the default when you hear the term makruh is that default is haram, right? Classically, when scholars say something is makruh, like for example, the books of fiqh, they'll talk about wearing gold, right? And they'll say wa yukra, right? But anybody that reads and understands, they know that they're not talking about, for men I'm talking about, they're not saying that it's makruh. What they mean is that it's actually haram, right? They just use the term makruh.
Just like yajibu sometimes used as
It's
fard.
fard, yeah, exactly.
So as someone, if someone was to come to you and ask you, is smoking haram? What would you say as a scholar, as an imam?
I guess the even more
What's your
clear
take on
way,
it? What's your take
to
on
put
it?
that is, would you say someone who's drinking and who's smoking is the same? Could we say that this guy drinks and this guy smokes? Are they at that same level of haram?
No.
No, right?
No.
So then we open up a discussion that this is definitely not. So then we have to say there's different levels of haram,
Yeah.
right? Once we get to that territory of haram. So is there different levels of haram, or this is not haram and it's
It's not haram as much as this is haram, or right. Well,
So
so
I mean, of course,
how would you conclude that discussion for a person? The
it's
person-
prohibited. It's prohibited.
Prohibited.
Prohibited,
Okay, so
right?
Yeah, don't open up
it's-
that door, right?
Okay, so according to you guys, you shuyukh, it's haram. I just want the audience to know that, because everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and another scholar may say otherwise. But from what I believe is
So the reason
haram
I,
and
yeah, so-
tahrimi, which means
yeah.
pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, so that's why I was using the word prohibited, right? I'm not even saying haram makruh. I'm just saying prohibited because prohibition applies to both haram and makruh tahrimi. They both mean
Correct,
prohibited,
correct.
right?
Makes sense.
Right.
So now, right, you have smoking on one side, and this is the legal rulings of Islam. Another reason why it can be prohibited is because would you consider it to be kulu washrabu wa la tusrifu? Would you consider it to be wasteful? Like Allah Ta'ala says, eat and drink, but don't waste. So smoking is like, hey, I'm gonna have one right now. I need to buy a pack right now, and I need to buy another one,
Waste
and
of
so
wealth.
on and so on. So wasting your wealth, this is something that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala will ask you about.
Of course. Over the
And
years, a person
over-
accumulates a
yeah,
lot of money that
right.
he ends
And
up wasting.
statistically, a lot of money goes
Of course.
down the drain with smoking or any type of
Dependence
I
on.
would even say accessories right now, because they have pens which you can smoke from. They have
Yeah.
what are those things called?
Um, yeah. I know what you
Vapes.
mean. Vapes, yeah.
Vapes, right? Vapes, these small little
Yeah.
gadgets and machines
Yeah.
where people are using, and it's just new products coming out every
Mm-hmm.
day. It's just enhancing the way of smoking, right? Just make it better, make it
Mm-hmm. Easier.
easier. They got filters right now, and you just pop them in, take out the other one, other
Mm-hmm.
pack. It's like ammos, right? Or something like that. Just fill it right back up again. So everything, in conclusion to this, is going to be a waste of money, a waste of your wealth. So you can clearly see why it is prohibited in Islam.
And then there's one more thing I want to add about the smoking thing, right? When you smoke, of course, you're harming yourself. But sometimes the people that are secondhand smoking, they're harmed as well, either
Yeah.
at that same level or worse. So now that person is not choosing to harm himself. You
Yeah.
are the one that's without permission harming
We can
somebody
take that
else.
as a third reason,
Right.
disturbance for people.
Right. It's harmful. Like secondhand smoking is as harmful as, and also your generation after you, when they see everybody smokes at home, it's just like normal.
Yeah, you're
everybody
giving
else-
that, I guess, that vibe
Yeah.
off where, hey, look, I'm doing it. And you know what's funny? I had like uncles and stuff. When they would be smoking, and they would be telling me like, they'll just be doing
Take
it.
a
They'll be like,
puff?
hey, don't do that.
Okay.
Don't do this. Don't ever do this, right? Friends and environment and the people that you hang around with, your company, sometimes they can encourage you to do it. Hey, just take a puff, and you might not like it in the beginning, but just because everyone's doing it, you don't want to be
But they say
left out.
it's an acquired taste. In the beginning,
there
you know
you
you're not
go.
gonna
It's
like it.
Sheikh sound like a commercial. So with that being said, let's move on to hookah and shisha specifically. Now, when I was younger, when I was a teenager, I remember we're here, all of us are in New York City. When we used to think about hookah or shisha, the first place or location would be Stanway in Astoria.
They call
right?
it the Miami of
All
New
right?
York.
So Miami of New York, right. So everybody used to go there to do hookah and shisha. And that was the only place. And just like you mentioned, when you're going to be 18 or 21 for you to able to do that, they used to be checking. Right now, at the moment, before it was like an Arab culture thing, right? Hookah and shisha are more of an Arab culture thing.
Yeah.
So right now, it's so out there, right? It's so accessible that I'm not pointing out to a specific culture, right? But you go to a Hispanic restaurant, they got hookah there. You go to a black restaurant, black-owned
It's
restaurant,
true, yeah.
it's there.
Yeah.
You go to even white people restaurant, even in the city, you go there.
I've seen it in
Right.
parks.
In parks too, people carrying it whatsoever. Every restaurant literally has that as one of their menus right
Yeah.
now. Right?
Yeah.
So it's so exposed, and age is not even making a difference anymore. So now the question is, given the legal rulings of Islam within smoking, they would say, you know what? Hookah can be permissible maybe because there was an individual who came and asked me, I use rose water in my hookah and shisha. Rose water, it's permissible, it's halal. So that's what's pretty much, I would say, combustion inside or
But it's not
somehow-
the water that makes it. It's the nicotine that's
Okay.
addicting. It's in the flavor, which is the same thing in cigarette.
So nowadays they have a lot of flavors.
Yeah, some are nicotine free.
Right? They have so many flavors. People
Yeah.
are selling them right now. It's a good business right now. I mean,
Yeah.
I know some people personally that do that business. They ask me, "Is it okay? I'm not doing it, but I'm selling it." So I want to also bring it up to that topic right now, where would it be haram to even sell and distribute these?
So I think before we even go to the selling part,
Yeah, let's
we
just
gotta- we gotta
clarify
talk about
the.
the ruling of it first, right? With the rose water thing, it's not like I'm drinking rose water. You're still smoking it at the end of the day.
Still smoking it.
You're inhaling smoke. And I think there's plenty of research out there.
Yeah.
All it takes is just a little bit of research
Yeah.
of how harmful it is. In fact, some studies even show that it's more harmful than cigarettes.
More harmful than cigarettes.
Right?
Because you
True.
inhale more stuff
Yeah.
Mhm.
in one session.
Exactly, you're inhaling more, right? There's a lot of research out there. We're not scientists, right, to break it down exactly, but I mean, the research is out there, right? The studies are out there, and it's known. It's not like a hidden fact, right?
It says on the packet too.
Yeah.
It's harmful
Yeah, yeah,
on the
says
local flavors. So it's
Yeah.
like right there for you.
yeah.
Okay.
So
As
What
far as
about
selling, buying and selling,
buying and
it's also
selling?
not
It's
allowed.
also haram.
It's
Just
just
like
like
selling
alcohol and stuff, and you can't
wine,
buy-
cigarettes. So you
Yeah,
would deem
yeah.
it to be
I mean, there's a
prohibited
hadith of
as well.
the Prophet ﷺ that prohibited the person transporting alcohol, selling alcohol, drinking alcohol.
But this is not alcohol, though, right? Just
Uh,
saying.
but no. But the scholars actually take that hadith and they apply it. Can you indirectly be involved with sin or not?
Mhm.
Right? And I think most of the scholars are of the opinion that you can't be transporting sin, you can't be doing the sin, you can't be selling the sin.
So as for like somebody who works in a supermarket as a transporter, and sometimes he will transport alcohol and beer. What is that? I mean, I've heard and I've read in Hanafi fiqh that the transport he doesn't get any sin.
Yeah.
But so the same thing. If somebody, let's say, is an Uber driver, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes they pick up passengers who go to the club. He's also transporting and
Yeah,
becoming a means
someone.
to
Would
somebody
it
doing
be
something
haram or
haram.
not? But in that
Right.
case, it.
So
yeah.
Abu Hanifa, that's why I did say most scholars. Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, he does allow, I don't want to say allow, but he's more flexible when it comes to indirect involvement of the sin
okay.
as opposed to direct involvement. So, like what Sheikh was mentioning, a taxi driver taking somebody to the club, he's not directly involved, he's indirectly involved.
I think other
Sort of.
mazahib would say otherwise, say no.
Yeah, even the Sahibain.
So they,
Okay,
all
I'm
the
gonna-
Uber drivers are in trouble. All the,
I'm gonna ask you another question. Okay, it's kind of like this: that the Uber driver, ads on YouTube, right? You have a space. You don't know who. Like you can modify what kind of ad you put there.
Mhm.
Like you can say, okay, I want lifestyle, or I don't want alcohol, or stuff like that.
Okay.
You can, but sometimes let's say it's about education, but then an al-mahram comes up, right? You can't filter that out.
Yeah.
So how do a lot of people ask me that question as well? It's kind of like, let's say you have a billboard. You own the billboard, and you can't discriminate against people what they put. You're just renting the space.
Yeah.
Similarly, if you rent out your room, you can't say what they do in that room. It's just I'm renting out the room. Whoever takes it, right? But what if it's in your like ability to be like, okay, I don't want these things, but then some things you don't have the control over. So then what do you do? Are you a transporter just like that? Someone who transports shisha and alcohol? Do you also? I mean, that's probably another topic. But
That's
if you
another
guys
topic
have
because
anything to say,
Doing it, doing hookah and shisha, prohibited. Selling, prohibited. But you're like, okay, I'm the guy who's transporting it, but I'm not the, I'm just a delivery guy.
yeah,
Or the delivery person. But the thing is here, yeah, it's permissible to do it just to transport, because even if it's like any type of delivery service, you don't really know sometimes what's inside.
Mhm. Yeah. Even truck drivers,
Right.
you don't know what you're
Um,
delivering.
Postal services or whatsoever. But if it's something specific, I would usually tell someone, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, or you probably, if you have something else to say, I would say, look, for the time being, if this is your job, then do it. But if you find something better, then take it.
Right. When
Right.
you find it.
When
take
you
it.
find something, and then if you can, then you should go that way.
Of
So
course,
it's like
right.
not suggesting for you to do that, but if you do it, it's all right.
Right.
And also, I think there's a huge difference between, like, for example, a person that works in a supermarket, right? And he's or she is just checking out that item that a person's bringing, whatever it's a bottle of beer or cigarettes, whatever the case may be, versus a guy that's selling alcohol in a restaurant where you're pouring the wine in somebody's glass,
Mhm.
right? Because when
Yes.
someone's buying it from a supermarket, why that will fall under indirect? Because that person that's buying it may drink, he may sell it, you don't know exactly,
He
right?
may be a transporter.
He may you have no idea, right? You have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of guess, perhaps, but you don't know for sure. As opposed to you being a restaurant owner and you selling alcohol to people that are sitting down in your restaurant, pouring wine in their glass. I mean, that's a huge difference, right? Same thing with shisha. If you're owning, what do they call it,
Company,
shisha bar or
brand,
something,
bar. Uh-huh.
yeah, and you're specifically selling where people come in and they smoke. I mean, there's a huge difference between that and selling the shisha to someone else, right, outside.
Okay.
I mean, all of these things. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, right? It's a long hadith where he said that Maharim Allah is like a shepherd who goes near the pasture where you're not supposed to go.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, just don't go near that area. ولا تقربوا الزنا. Kind of like that. Just don't go to that
Don't go
area.
near.
You know, it's never gonna end well for you or
Mhm.
people who come after you. They're gonna take you as an example, your children, etc.
Yeah.
So, just moving forward, one of the things is when you consider smoking, hookah, shisha as a norm, or the Arabic text word would be referred as urf, right? So something which is cultural, you've seen it being done in your culture. For example, hookah, just like I mentioned earlier, hookah and shisha was pretty much in the Arab culture. You go to the Middle East today, even the rest areas, I seen myself. The rest areas, they have a little hut, they have a little station. You just pay, they bring you the whole hookah or shisha, you're inside that tent, and it's like a rest area. That's how normal it is. At the same time, say for example, I'm from Bangladesh. You have shupari, you have pan, you have zarda, which is added to the pan, and all these other flavors. We're not talking about the sweet pan. I think sweet pan.
I don't have any of those.
Right, shupari and pan, right? It has tobacco inside, depending on what you put inside. Now, because it has tobacco in there, and that also connects to cigarettes, which has tobacco, hookah, shisha, right? But the people of Bangladesh, they take it as a norm, something cultural. That's why they take it. Moving on to in the Indian subcontinent, right? In Pakistan, they have things like gutka and so many other. The other thing is called, I think, swat or something like that.
I think so, yeah.
Right? I don't really know the term words, but they have certain things like cigarettes, like smoking, but it would be more of a solid thing, right? A solid figure, which they can take straight, not just inhale it, right? Places like India, right? Gutka, right? Those packets where they tell you where this may cause cancer, right? That's the funny part about it, right? They sell it, this may cause cancer. At the same time, based on my experience, when I was in South Africa, it's normal to be smoking in South Africa. You have 12-year-olds, 15-year-olds. I remember going in a house one time where the uncle of that house, I was sitting there at the living room, and we're having a discussion, and you're just talking, and I just had meet the uncle and stuff, and he opened up a cigarette box and he offered me one, and I said no, I don't smoke. Now at the same time, at that very moment, he offered his son a cigarette too, and he's like 15 years old, and he takes one. And both of them are like casually smoking. And the people that I came with, they also took one too. And you probably think apparently like they wouldn't smoke. They didn't look like smokers, but they just did it for that time, right? Whether they're doing it all the time or for that time,
Yeah.
whatever the situation is. It's my first time being there, so it kind of created a shock in me. Because culture-wise, I don't have my father doing that, right? Just sitting in the living room, hey, you wanna smoke, right? So again, right, in our Desi households or in the Indian subcontinent, they're probably passing the shupari tray around, right?
Yeah.
And have tobacco there, right? So again, I'm not justifying anything. I started to understand it from their perspective. This is their norm. So can you take smoking, hookah, shisha, shupari, which has in the ingredients, or gutka, which causes cancer since the packet says so. All of these things, can you use norm or urf as an excuse or a loophole for it to be permissible? Because there's a hadith, right? When it comes to eating, there was a tribe at the time of the Prophet ﷺ where they ate horse meat, right? We all know that horse meat is makruh or even haram because it's used for other things, right? Such as warfare and horses being the type of animal they are, valuable and whatsoever, right? But when this this situation came to the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ said this tribe specifically ate horse meat. So the Prophet ﷺ said for them is pretty much permissible, let it be. So that's also considering the norm. What about coming for the salah? Some individuals come for the salah where they're wearing a t-shirt And I had many youth come to me where the uncle said to me, I have to cover my, my arms and my hands, So t-shirts are norms of the society. So one can come to pray with the t-shirt on. Again, these are just examples of, norm. So I know I took long with the question, but I wanted to give it out, just easy to understand. The stage is rest of the stage is yours. And after this, inshallah, we're going to conclude.
Okay, I mean, I don't have too much to say, but I guess we can make a clear distinction between all the norms that we're talking about, because these things, they're not haram because they're intoxicants, right? Like cigarettes are not intoxicants. She says not intoxicants, right? They say they get you lightheaded, but it doesn't leave your aql, right? Khamr, the reason why it's called khamr is you khamr al-aql, it covers the aql, that you lose control of yourself. But all these things, they don't have any of those.
Where you're out of your mind.
Right.
It takes you out. Like
Right.
intoxicated.
So I guess the only thing we look there, correct me if I'm wrong, is your health hazards, how detrimental it is to your health. That's what we look at, right? Because, like we said, it's not intoxicant. So cigarettes is a whole different story, because we know how
slowly
it kills
you.
a person. It barbecues your lungs. They have like they did demonstrations where they have a healthy lung and they have a lung of someone who's been smoking for years. One is like has a pinkish taint to it. One is dark, like it's charcoal. Like that's how much harm it has. And when it first came out, like you mentioned, it was a style for people to just pop us. In the airplanes, they used to smoke like nothing. But when it first came out, because it was style and it was whatever, it was a class. But as we know now, all the harms that comes with it, that's the reason why we're saying that. But so when it comes to supari and pan, I don't think we can say is as harmful as smoking. Like there are some, probably 1 in a million case where somebody gets a mouth cancer from that or something like that. So that's how I would differentiate. Like it's not like pan specifically and supari, whatever else goes in there, is not as detrimental to your health as smoking, right? But shisha does fall in the same category as smoking.
But would you say norm can be used though? At the end
So that's another thing. A lot of time you see in social media, this is our norm, this is our culture.
it
and
became
Islam,
our norm now.
Yeah. We got to differentiate between culture and Islam. Islam allows me to marry someone from the other culture, but our culture doesn't. So there we differentiate between culture and urf and norm and Islam. So similarly, we should do the same thing here and say urf is something else, Islam is something else, right? Like in our culture, we have, like especially the Bangladesh, right? We lived and grew up, and our ancestors lived with Hindus and mushrikun. And for them, like they should do salam, touching the feet. Right, and sometimes in some houses you go like, if you don't go and touch the feet of the grandma, it's like look down at, right? Yeah. But it's just urf. In Islam, there's no such a thing like that. You're bending down to someone, right? Yeah. So those things are urf. So I guess we kind of have to be like, this is urf. Let me just stay away from it. And this is Islam. Whatever Islam accepts from the urf, I'll take it. And some things in urf are good actually. Are very good. Okay. Like, in Bangla we have amkhatli. Like you take mangoes and fruits and stuff to your sister's house or something like that. Like it's a culture, but it's good. It's salatul rahim, right? Yeah. You go and build connect, right? So not families. All things in urf is bad. Yeah. It's just you gotta they say you put the deen in your head and dunya and deen in your head like a crown and the dunya in your hand, right? If you have to fix your crown, you put the dunya down and you fix your crown. Kind of like that, right? So you gotta give priority to whatever Islam accepts or doesn't accept, and then it's not the other way around, I guess.
What about you, Sheikh? Would you say norm can be used to make something permissible?
So I think what Sheikh was saying, first of all, there's two types of urf, as he was trying to say, right? There's an urf that's mu'tabar, that can be taken in, right? But that's when it matches the prohibitions and the commands of the Sharia, right? As long as it falls through and there's nothing wrong with it, there's nothing haram in the urf, then the urf is fine, right? And he said this, some urf is even good, right? It promotes some of the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you have some urf that's considered urf fasid. You can't bring that in and say that we have norms, right? Right? Because at the end of the day, drinking alcohol over here is a norm.
It can be a norm in some places.
So what am I going to say? It's a norm.
Irish people love.
Realistically speaking, even fornication to an extent is almost like a norm.
Yeah,
right. In some more liberal
they
cities,
tell you do it, just use a condom.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So are you just going to justify it, right? And even the hadith that's brought up with the horse, for example, the horse, that hadith actually is a source of debate between the scholars. In fact, most of the scholars actually say horse meat is allowed,
Okay.
right, because of that hadith, including Abu Yusuf Muhammad
Mhm.
from the Hanafi school. Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he says makruh not because the meat is haram, but as you mentioned, because it's
Because it's
used
used
for
other means.
warfare and other
Mm.
means, right? So it's not like the Prophet ﷺ was allowing something haram for a specific group of people, right?
Mhm.
That wasn't the case, right? The debate is whether it's haram or halal in the first place, right?
Mm.
So it's there. We don't have cases where the Prophet ﷺ may allowed something that's haram for a specific group of people and said, "Go ahead, you do it because it's your norm." I mean, it doesn't work like
Makes
that,
sense. Well, jazakumullahu khairan for getting both of you shuyukh to sit down on today's episode. Definitely, we're going to have a part 2. We still have to go into. We still have to talk about medical marijuana. Can we use, in that side of the world, right? Upper level of drugs and its usages. So we're definitely going to record a part 2 for this, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan for tuning in, Deen Feed family. We will catch you next time, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salaam alaikum.
right?
You guys not gonna say it's a wrap or anything?
I was good at what I'm like, man. Just